The Barbie campaign integrated various experiences like the Barbie dream house on Airbnb. How can blending digital and physical experiences enhance a marketing campaign's impact? In an era where digital experiences often dominate, what does the success of these physical experiences tell us about the role of in-person engagement in marketing? Is there a future there?
So in media and advertising in general, we're facing two really big challenges that are affecting our effectiveness. So the first one is around fragmentation. So audiences are doing what they're going to do, and they're doing it in various channels. And the second one is around attention, people being bombarded by different messages. And so what Barbie has managed to do with its blend of lots of different digital and in real life activations is they've managed to find a way to do multimedia planning without resorting to just traditional approaches. And it's fantastic. Like, doesn't matter who you are, you will have been touched in some way by that campaign. And I think it's a brilliant case study in using your distinctive assets in different ways to engage different audiences.
Yeah, Rachel, I totally agree. I think we were looking at some data from Roku's US audience last month, and there's TV viewers seeing over 3,000 TV creatives a month there alone. So that means it's incredibly hard for that creative messaging to kind of cut through, and yet anybody being anybody. And this is what I think has made, and we've seen with the bumper box office numbers that Barbie's been able to do, the success of this going across many different target groups. It hasn't just simply been a very specific demographic, but actually tapping into, I think one of the things we'll talk about later, the nostalgia and the range of different people who already know Barbie and have known Barbie forever from their own childhood. But to your point, the Byron Sharp would love the fact that Barbie has just owned pink for the last couple of months. Wherever you looked, even if it wasn't for Barbie, you thought Barbie when you saw pink, because of the amount of work and that cross-media activations that they've managed to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. It does make it very difficult for other brands to follow suit, because they don't all have that strength of asset that Barbie has in the icon of Barbie. But it does raise the bar, I think, in terms of, if you have a campaign idea, can you activate it in new and interesting ways to broaden that reach?
The interesting part is how they've been able to keep it true to and relevant to the Barbie character and the Barbie story. So with all of these various partnerships that I think we'll talk about as well, it's still been very proximic to the Barbie brand. And there's been so many other activations and Barbie product lines that have been able to come out, but they're all a natural fit with Barbie, her character, what she'd normally go and do. And I think that's been an incredible piece of commercial development from the team, from everybody involved in working out what those could be and not overextending, because it's very easy to go too far. There's lots of brands out there who'd love to jump on this bandwagon. They've been very selective and done very well about keeping to Barbie's character and keeping that authenticity.
I would love to see more brands try the licensing or franchising approach to their kind of brand assets, and seeing what could happen if they saw the brand existing in other environments. So what would their Airbnb partnership look like? I think that would be incredibly rich in terms of creativity.
I completely agree. I think there's so many opportunities, if people look for them, for that to work. So a good example, Roku last year launched a film, Weird Al Yankovic. Daniel Radcliffe starred in it. It did really well for Roku as a content organization. And one of the partnerships we did was with Vans. Vans shoes were a part of Weird Al Yankovic's dress code. That's what he wore. And actually doing a custom range of that really tapped into these people who loved the show. They loved Weird Al when he was a very big deal in the 80s. doing all of those parody shows. And once you can tap into that kind of nostalgia and those emotions, those memories for people, it sets that brand apart so much versus their peer set and that consideration set that people could also have bought from. And I think those opportunities, they're not being used nearly enough, and there's lots of them there in different fields for different advertisers.
Yeah, definitely. Coming back to my second big challenge, when you're battling for attention against a sea of sameness, the more you can come up with these new and interesting ways of engaging consumers, the more successful you should be.
The Barbie movie saw various partnerships with various brands. What criteria do brands need to consider when selecting partnerships for cross promotions? And how do you maintain the authenticity of the core brand while collaborating with multiple brands and partners?
So one of the things that I think has been surprising and interesting about the range of partnerships that Mattel have chosen for the Barbie movie is you've got the expected ones in there, definitely. You've got the fashion and beauty sort of known winners, and I'm sure that they are being incredibly successful in terms of selling hairbrushes and makeup and all of those things that people are going to be loving at the moment. But what was equally successful were the things that were much more surprising and kind of a little bit weird. And they managed to challenge some of those rules that we might set about authenticity just by thinking about things in a bit of more of a fun way. So like pink food and the Airbnb partnership. Like it's not where your mind would easily go for a space where you could bring to life the Barbie world, and yet it works so well. So I think, yes, you need to look at those obvious places for brand partnerships, but actually some magic can happen if you do something that's unexpected and surprising to your audience.
Yeah, I think we were at Roku looking at some of the partnerships that happened actually personally when the kids started playing the Barbie Uno card game, and it's tangential. Clearly, it's not a fashion thing to do, but what it did allow them to do, which is a really clever insight, is take up the minds of two teenage girls who were just talking about Barbie all the time, and for 2 hours on a train journey, they were still just talking about Barbie, immersed in Barbie, and they absolutely loved it. And that's that's a good piece of planning and insight to understand the use case for this, and the fact that the enthusiasm would be there. That Barbie, you don't see Barbie playing Uno, etc. in the film. It's not a standard part of the character, but it is an ability to leverage that excitement from a specific bit of the target audience, and sure enough, it worked. So I think that to your point, that there's still got to be this natural kind of fit for it. We couldn't have had an energy brand and Barbie together. It would have been quite hard for an energy brand to kind of tap into that sort of thing. It's just not in any way part of the character, part of the story. It wouldn't have worked. But the range of things they have been able to do, and I don't know about you, Rich, I don't think I've seen a film come out with that many partnerships or spur that many kind of related accessories and products on the side. I think they've set a new bar, and it'll be really interesting to see what the overall split of revenue looks like for the whole initiative between the box office, between subsequent streaming, and then all of the merchandising that's gone around it.
See, I would challenge that energy couldn't be incorporated within the Barbie world. The thing that would need to come with it, and the thing that's true of all good partnerships, is there'd have to be like a fun or interesting or entertaining story with it. And that in itself might need a little bit more working out for an energy drink. But I think that's what that's the challenge or the gauntlet that the Barbie movie has laid down, that actually it can be possible to license freely. And while we're probably at peak Barbie right now, it has taken a lot to get there. So our appetite for franchise is much more than I think has ever been explored with Bond, has ever been explored with Marvel. And so maybe we'll see more and more brands treating their IP in this way in the future.
Absolutely. I think that part I definitely agree with. I would love to see, and maybe M6 can break ground with managing to move us on from green energy to pink energy for at least a summer. Whenever the Squid Games piece, and again it was the Vans tie-up, came out, the opportunity for this merchandising and licensing piece was really re-established. Barbie's taking it to a whole new level. I think, to your point, if we're at peak Barbie now, how long does it keep going before that real fatigue kicks in? And it'll be interesting. The Barbie run will end soon at the cinema. Does pink drop out of our landscape again, or how long will it keep going on for? I think it's probably very likely to disappear as quickly as it arrived, but that the memories and the creations in people's heads has very much been established this summer.
Yeah, I definitely think we're headed into maybe a green season, or maybe we'll go completely black. Yeah, I think we're probably going to end up with a bit of pink fatigue as a result. But that is in the essence of culture, things bubbling up, being as sticky and as interesting as a topic of conversation for everyone, and then falling away and being replaced by something new. And it's really good to see that that cinema is taking, or film is taking up the space left from TV and the sort of lack of water cooler moments that we now have because we're not watching TV in the same way.
Nostalgia is a powerful tool in marketing. What do you think about how the Barbie-core movement tapped into nostalgia to create a buzz around the movie, especially when promoting a classic brand like Barbie?
As Rachel said at the top, there's not very many brands that have the ubiquity of Barbie or the tenure. Barbie's been around for decades, so we've got this amazing potential that existed in terms of this brand that everybody's familiar with. Everybody has their own version, however kind of deep-rooted memory of kind of Barbie, and the nostalgia opportunity is therefore huge. And there's a good paper recently. Kantar were looking at their database of 250,000 ads in the UK, and they published commentary in June about how ads with a nostalgic element have a 13-point increase in likelihood of going viral. Things people want to share with other people, and not only does that have a sort of a very basic and healthy economics on your media when people are sharing all of that, what it points to is the power of nostalgia, of moving beyond, again, Rachel talked at the start, this bombardment of just normal ad messages at you. Nostalgia stops it just being about that 30 seconds that message is in front of you on a screen and visual, and it's kind of something between your eyes and your brain. It suddenly then taps into something a lot deeper and an emotional state that you have. Now, some of that's bad, but with something like Barbie, almost all childhood memories people have of Barbie are good memories. They're fun. Like Barbie is such a big part of lots of people's childhoods, and so realizing that and actually being able to embed so much nostalgia in the communication, as well as some of the very cool, innovative things like being able to take the old Barbie house that will have been in millions of households all up and down the country and then turn that into something you can actually go and see in Malibu on Airbnb. That's absolutely amazing. And that's an incredible link between the nostalgic element in your house and something you can now physically go and do. And think that being the fact that they haven't tried to completely revamp Barbie, make her Barbie 2023 with no links to what she was before, they've really kept that character exactly the same, and that's allowed them to maximize that nostalgic impact.
Yeah, I just build on one of the things you said around childhood memories about Barbie being so positive. I actually worked with Mattel many years ago, and one of the challenges was children playing with Barbies are seeing it in such a pure and honest way, but adults then looking at Barbie are where some of the more negative connotations come in. And what they managed to do so perfectly with the film is tap into the childhood memory and not bring in some of those negative associations. So, for example, the iconic scene with the bent feet. For kids, that's just the way you can put the shoes onto the Barbie. It's the unique thing about the doll. But for adults, that's where you start to have those questions about, well, whether women should be wearing high heels constantly, that kind of adult lens on it. And I think the things that they did to tap into that nostalgia rather than to bring in some of that criticism was by leaning into humor, leaning into the fun of it, but also doing that with some self-awareness and honesty about how kind of faintly ridiculous things like the bent feet are. And it was a beautiful combination of those things that has resulted in such a positive moment for the brand. I think in the future, we will look at the way that they have used, tapped into nostalgia as a case study in how brands can turn around from being in a negative place to being in a really, really positive one.
It's interesting when the question comes up in media land of what are your favorite ads? What ads do you remember? That the ads that typically appear on people's list aren't the ones that were released in the last year, 6 months, which you would have thought there's a big recency effect. You should remember those more. They're the ones that come far earlier in life. And so, but they've stuck with you, and you remember the ad, you remember the brand for it. It's so such a powerful thing. And one of the things we at Roku have is a screensaver, which we term Roku City. Is what happens when you haven't been watching any content for a period of time. The screensaver comes on, but the screensaver is actually a sort of a scrolling panorama of loads of different scenes from different films. So it's a city, but in the background in the river, you can see a ship sinking. And on one of the skyscrapers, you can see a huge King Kong in there. And there's just Easter eggs all over the place. And we see a ridiculous amount of viewership of people waiting for Roku City to come on so that they can go and pick out all of the Easter eggs in there. And they're all about nostalgic moments, in this instance from film and television, but that go back a really long way. Like the King Kong thing is literally decades and decades old. People still know it, they see it. And we see this disproportionate amount of consumption of essentially a screensaver app, which is amazing, but does talk exactly to this power of nostalgia.
I would really love for the power of nostalgia to be brought into this debate about the sacrificing the long term at the expense of the short term, or the short term at the expense of the long term. Because really what you could be creating as a brand is that lasting memory that is going to have that effect in 10, 20 years time, where you are beloved because of what you did right now. And I don't know that many marketers are thinking about things in such a way that, the brand guardianship that you're doing at the moment is actually the fuel for future nostalgia. Because the Barbie movie has shown that it can be so incredibly powerful and beneficial from a bottom line perspective.
Totally. Well, and I think this is going to go not just for brands, but also content creators and distributors. It's interesting. I saw that Amazon are bringing Neighbours back to the UK screen. So something that had ceased and there'd been a big thing about the end, and there was a huge nostalgic outpouring around that, sufficient for Amazon to relaunch it. So it'll be on Freevee, and I think therefore this opportunity to tap into the power of nostalgia with consumers lives across not just the brands, but their agencies and their strategists, the platforms who distribute that material as well.
What do you think will be nostalgic in the next 10 years that we currently have right now?
Hopefully, in the world of technology change, I'm going to pick a technology and a way of using it and hope that in 10, 15 years' time it's changed. I think that people will look at the way that social media worked, Instagram, TikTok, Snap, and the change that we've seen just in the last 5 years of the way a big chunk of the population communicate, share, etc. And I think that will be nostalgic, whether it's because I don't know what will supplant it, whether it's a VR experiences, whether it's far more in real life, who knows? But I think we're in such an interesting time at the moment in terms of just the way that certainly the younger demographic, but younger demographic, I literally mean 40 and below, share, which is a huge part of the population. I think that will be a behaviour that we look fondly back on in over a decade's time.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, especially as we're already starting to see a bit of nostalgia for the old YouTube and the old YouTube influencer, people who had grown up with that kind of relationship, and you know, it's kind of died down a little bit, replaced by the TikTok influencer. But I'm already seeing like lots of people remembering when they used to sit up and watch those videos in the past. I would like to think that we will be nostalgic for some of those big Christmas ads. I think we already have an element of it. I think that's something that we're going to end up looking back on and thinking about when Christmas was so magical because we had the John Lewis ad to look forward to, and maybe bemoaning that that they're not as good now as they used to be. I think there will be a bit of an ad nostalgia about that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, when you think about that, I wonder if in 10 years' time there'll be a new film, Ryan Reynolds starring opposite somebody in a film entitled "You've Got WhatsApp," and it'll just be it'll be a view of kind of this WhatsApp conversation. People remember, remember when we only used to talk on WhatsApp? So actually, I might write the screenplay for that this afternoon. Yeah, got to go.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.